In this video, we will talk about another research study that's been done in the marketing communications literature. And it has to do with how timing influences marketing communications. So, the study title that we'll be discussing and exploring is Time Will Tell: The Distant Appeal of Promotion and Imminent Appeal of Prevention. So, basically the idea behind this study is how does timing, whether an event that's imminent, that's soon to occur, or an event that's about to occur in the distant future, how does the timing of an event influence the type of marketing communications on customers? And the type of marketing communications is broadly defined into two types, whether it's a promotion type of marketing communication or a prevention type of marketing communication. So having said this, let's get into the details, starting with this hypothetical scenario. So imagine it is early in January and you're just beginning to think about what to give your sweetheart for Valentine's Day. With time to spare, you entertain a number of grand ideas about the most romantic way to demonstrate your affection, contemplating the pleasure that would ensue from selecting the perfect gift. Now imagine if this calendar was to roll ahead to February 13th and you still had not bought a gift. How might your perspective change? So, as you can see in this scenario, in this example, one is you're in January. It's January. You still have more than a month time to decide on what gift to give to your partner. Whereas in the other scenario, it's a day before. It's February 13th, and you're running out of time. It's imminent. The event is coming up. It's very imminent, and you have to make a decision very, very soon. So, like I said before, how does the timing of an event, right? The timing of when you have to make a decision, how does that affect the type of marketing communications that you will be more attracted to? In other words, what type of marketing communications will be more appealing to customers depending on how soon or how far out they have to make a decision? That's the big idea using this example. So, with time closing in, right? With time closing in, the unpleasant possibility of waking up tomorrow morning empty-handed would probably weigh heavier on your mind than any grandiose notion of thrilling your sweetheart with the perfect present. With only a day to make the purchase, simply getting a gift that isn't bad is suddenly of paramount concern. So when you have a lot of time, right? I think we all, our students, I think myself, including myself and our students, can probably, relate to this idea because we've probably encountered this, at some point in our lives. When we have a lot of time to think about an event or a lot of time to think before a decision has to be made, we think about grand ideas. We think about our dreams, about our big pictures. We think about, what it would be like if something like this were to happen, even if we realistically know that that probably is a bit of a stretch, we still like to entertain these big ideas when the decision that has to be made is still very far out. We like to think in ideal terms, whereas when the decision has to be made in the near future, like a couple of days ahead of us, or a week, when it's coming up, then we all of a sudden become more realistic. We think, oh, okay. Because the time is coming. It's time. It's crunch time. Therefore, we come to our senses and we realize and recognize our limitations, some of the boundaries, and therefore we become just more realistic. And we make a decision that is not necessarily the ideal grand, choice, but something that, isn't all that too bad as long as I can live with it. That happened to me. I'm sure it'll happen to a lot of our students. when you first enter a program for your, MGM, you think about, oh, okay, I'm going to get this big job. This is my dream job. Working in this company with this type of salary, with my skill sets. But as commencement, as the program comes to comes to an end, and you have like a month till graduation, you still don't have a job. Then all of that, grand and ideal type of, dreams, they may still be there, but, you are becoming more realistic now. And now you're searching for jobs that may not be your dream job, but something that you can live with. Why? Because you're running out of time. You're being more realistic. So the point that I'm trying to make, and what this, study is trying to get across to us, is that depending on when you have to make that decision, different, ways in terms of how communication comes across and how it's framed, will have different appeals. Okay, so that's the big idea behind this study. So the thought process. So the next couple of slides will sort of elaborate and go into more detail in terms of what I just said in terms of the big idea. So when a purchase or a decision needs to be made in the near future, when it's imminent, when the purchase is imminent, does preventing an undesirable outcome, for instance, like in the, when we started out with this hypothetical example, does appointing your spouse become more appealing? Does that become more top of the mind? Does that become more salient? Does that become more important now than promoting a desirable outcome, like such as thrilling your spouse with a perfect gift? So depending on when that purchase or the decision has to be made, does the weight shift between prevention versus promotion? Right? That's the idea. In contrast, when there is still ample time to make the purchase, when it's still far out, when it's in the distant future, is achieving a desirable outcome that's more promotion focused, right? Is that more appealing than preventing an undesirable outcome? So if, depending on when the purchase has to be made, is it near or is it far out into the future? Does that shift the focus, or does that shift the weight in terms of, the appeal or the attractiveness of different framings of marketing communication in terms of how they're framed, either in a promotion-focused manner or in a prevention-focused manner? That's the thought process that we're trying to investigate and learn. So, when a purchase is imminent, prevention benefits loom large, leading to a preference for prevention-framed messages or products over promotion-framed messages or products. So when a decision has to be made in the near future, when it's crunch time, then the message that focuses on prevention benefits, right, avoiding undesirable outcomes, for example, that type of message will be more preferable. That will sound more attractive than a promotion-framed message that focuses on desirable outcomes. On the contrary, when the purchase is off in the future, in the distant future, promotion-framed messages, right, that focus more on desirable outcomes will be more appealing than prevention-framed messages that focus on avoiding undesirable outcomes. Right? So as you can see, it's kind of like this is why it's interesting, because it's like two sides of the coin, right? One is promotion focus, which is about pursuing desirable outcomes, whereas the prevention focus is avoiding undesirable outcomes. But what we're saying is that the preference of one over the other, it shifts, it changes depending on when the decision needs to be made, whether it's in the near future or it's in the distant future. So why does this shift between near and distal future occur? So when a purchase is imminent, the advantage accrued to prevention-framed products or messages is driven by the heightened the heightened sensitivity to the pain that's anticipated from potentially not achieving one's goal, right? So when a purchase is in the near future, when it's imminent, then people will be more focused on, people will be afraid that, oh, okay, I need to avoid this undesirable outcome, right? So they're more sensitized and they're more concerned about, avoiding, eliminating the undesirable aspect. Whereas when the purchase is in the more distant future, when it's far out into the future, the advantage accrued to promotion-framed products or messages is driven by the pleasure, right? The pleasure, the joy that's anticipated from potentially achieving one's goals. So again, there's a shift in weight that's occurring depending on the time that, the decision has to be made. So promotion-framed messages highlight maximal goals, right? To buy something that's fabulous or to get a great deal, and offer the product as a means to attain that positive outcome. Whereas a prevention-framed message highlights, sensitizes the minimal goals. For instance, to not make a bad purchase, right? As long as it's not too bad, that's okay. Or to not get ripped off, right? Because you want to at least maintain the status quo, right? And offer the product as a means to prevent that negative outcome, to avoid that negative outcome. Okay? So, as events draw near, concerns of desirability, right, give way to concerns of feasibility. So, when the purchase decision is imminent, when the event is coming up, then feasibility receives more weight than desirability. Right? And then it's the reverse. When the event is in the far future, then desirability receives more weight compared to feasibility. So feasibility means you're being now more realistic, right? Because time is running out, so you need to do something. And as long as, you can maintain the status quo and not, realize any negative outcomes, that may be, a positive thing. Therefore, what seems attractive off in the future may lose its gleam, right, when it requires immediate action. Also, as events draw near, negative information gains in overall salience, and individuals often become less optimistic about fulfilling their goals. So, like I said, this goes back to exactly, the example that I shared with you earlier about, students looking for jobs, when they first, enter into a program versus when they're about to graduate with only a couple of weeks left, then, their emphasis or their focus shifts from desirability to more feasibility. So the summary of the underlying logic can be stated as, when a purchase is proximal, right, when it's imminent, the anticipated pain from failing to fulfill one's purchasing goal will drive the appeal of prevention-framed over promotion-framed products or messages, right? So you want to avoid the pain, right, from failing to fulfill one's goal, and therefore a message or a product that's framed in a prevention manner, it seems more appealing than a message or a product that's framed in a promotion-oriented manner. Whereas when a purchase is distant in the far future, the anticipated pleasure from fulfilling one's purchasing goal will drive the appeal of promotion-framed over prevention-framed products and messages. Right? So then again, it's the reverse. So by now, I think we can sort of make sense of how the shift and the focus and the weight of a message or a product changes between prevention focus to promotion, or vice versa, depending on when the purchase decision needs to be made, whether it's imminent or it's way out into the distant future. So some of the predictions will be such as the following. When a purchase is temporarily proximal, right, prevention-framed versus promotion-framed products or messages will be more appealing. Whereas when a purchase is temporarily distant, it's in the far future, promotion-framed versus prevention-framed products or messages will be more appealing. So this is very consistent with what we have discussed up to this point. So in the next couple of slides, I would like to share some data with you that test these predictions to see whether these predictions are supported or not. So I'm going to show you two experiments. So this experiment is about customers that are in the market to buy a car. And they were told that, to some customers that they were in the market to buy a car and, you had to make a decision in the near future. Whereas, in the next couple of days, whereas to another group of customers, they told them that you had to make a decision in the far future, in a month or longer ahead. So both of these customers, depending on when they had to make a decision, received an email from this company called autoselect.com. And it's a marketing communication. It's an email from this company, autoselect.com. And depending on, when you had to make the decision, you receive different types of emails, whether the email was either presented in a prevention-focused manner or in a promotion-focused manner. So let's read the email, and we can, I will elaborate on what this email is about in terms of how it's framed. So thank you for your interest in our dealership. We realize that as a prospective buyer, you have an idea of what you want in an automobile. So as you read through this email, you will see a couple of words that are expressed in parentheses, in brackets. The words that are presented in brackets is an email that's framed in a prevention-focused manner, whereas an email that's not expressed in brackets is an email that's framed in a promotion-focused manner. So some people received an email that was, expressed in a promotion-focused manner, that is without the words in brackets, whereas others received an email that was framed in a prevention-focused manner using the words in brackets. So let's read it again. Thank you for your interest in our dealership. We realize that as a prospective buyer, you have an idea of what you want or what you need in an automobile, and you desire the very best, and you do not want to settle for less. So again, best is expressed in a promotion-focused manner, whereas the bracket "and you do not want to sell for less" is an email that's expressed in a prevention-focused manner. Our dealership has years of experience in meeting customers' dreams or expectations, right? We pride ourselves in providing our customers with select model styles that are always cutting edge or never behind the times. And there are loads of extra features and no skimping on features. You will only find fully stocked, will not find trimmed down packages here. So again, depending on whether you receive the message as only find fully stocked or will not find trimmed down packages here. Plus, there is the satisfaction of getting a good deal that would be promotion focused, or of never paying too much that would be prevention focused. So so in this slide, I think this is a good slide that will sort of help you understand how the study was designed. So here we have a 2x2 matrix, right? We have cells A, B, C, and D. And we have in the vertical axis, we have the time, right? Whether the customers had to buy a car in the near future or in the distant future, far ahead. But that's what that stands for, right? Time, near, far, when they had to buy the car. And then the message frame, that's the email, right? How the email was framed, right, to the customers, whether it was framed in a promotion-focused manner or a prevention-focused manner. And so we can think of 4 different combinations of emails, right? So those that received an email, right, in A, if you were, so let's say that we had 100 customers, right? And so there's 4 different versions of the survey that a customer could have received, right? So there's 25 people in each cell, 25 in A, 25 in B, 25 in C, 25 in D. And if you were allocated in cell C, then your task was to buy a car in the near future, and the email that you received was expressed or framed in a promotion-focused manner. Whereas if you were one of those participants in cell B, then your task was you were to buy a car in the near future, but the email that you received was expressed, framed in a prevention-focused manner. And then the same logic goes to, cells C and D. So if you were in C, then your task was to buy a car in the far future, in the distant future, and the email that you received was expressed and framed in a promotion-focused manner. And then for D, your task was to buy a car in the far future, and the email was framed in a prevention-focused manner. So the ultimate interest here was, okay, if the customers received these different types of ads and the time that they were supposed to buy the car, the decision of when to buy the car, the attitude towards the ad, in this case, the ad is the email. So we're ultimately trying to understand, okay, what is the preference or the attitude towards this email message, right? So the hypothesis is that customers, so the diagonals, so there's 4 cells here, and the diagonal cells are B and C. The off diagonals are A and D. And as you can see here, I said for B and C, the attitude towards the ad here is the email that the customers received. So the attitude towards the ad, if you were those in B and C, would be high. So they would have a more positive attitude towards the email for those that were assigned to cells B and C. And then the off diagonals, A and D, would be less. So the attitude towards the ad would be lower for those that were assigned to cells A and D. Why? Why is it higher for B and C? Well, it's because these are the compatible. These are the ones that are matching. In other words, for B, the decision to buy the car is near, and the email, the ad, the marketing communication was framed in a prevention-focused manner. Whereas for C, the time to buy the car was in the distant future, and the email was framed in a promotion-focused manner. So based on what we said in the previous slides, the B and the C are compatible. These are the situations where the message, the marketing communication message, is framed in a manner that's compatible and consistent with when the decision needs to be made, whereas A and D are incompatible, right? So having said this, let's see if the data supports our predictions. So as you can see here, it's the attitude towards the ad, and we have 2 situations, right? Near and far. So the vertical axis is the attitude towards the ad. And you can see here that when the customers were asked to buy a car in the near future, the marketing communications or the ad or the email in this case that was framed in a prevention-focused manner, this created more favorable attitudes than a message, the email that was framed in a promotion-focused manner. So the B, the red bar, is higher than the A bar, the blue bar, whereas you can see that this flips when the decision needs to be made in the distant future. Then the ad or the marketing communications or the email that was framed in a prevention-focused manner created a more favorable attitude than the email or the marketing communication or the ad that was framed in a prevention-focused manner. So as you can see, this is very explicitly and very clearly shown that the weights of how the messages are framed, either in a prevention-focused or promotion-focused, it changes, right? The shift occurs depending on when the decision needs to be made. So the results from experiment 1 strongly support our hypothesis and what we've been discussing up to this point. Let's look at experiment 2 now to see if this can be confirmed again slightly differently. So here, they use student subjects, participants, and they were asked to make some reservations for a vacation, for a trip to Europe. So again, they were asked either to make a last-minute summer vacation, reservation, or that it would be a vacation over winter break. So, let's say that it's started before the fall break, so they still have like 4 or 5 months to make a vacation reservation over winter break. So that would be a decision-making, in the distant future. Whereas if you're asked to make a last-minute summer vacation break, reservation, and it's like, it's towards the end of the summer break, right before fall semester starts, then that would be a last minute summer vacation reservation, which would coincide with a decision that would have to be made in the near future. And all participants then were presented with an advertisement for a fictitious online service, pricealerts.com, through which they could purchase an airplane ticket for their vacation. So then they received an email from this company called pricealerts.com, right? And the prevention framed advertisement read such as the following: don't get stuck at home and don't get ripped off. In contrast, the promotion framed advertisement from this company read, give yourself a memorable vacation and get the best deal. So as you can see, depending on, so the email was framed either in a prevention framed mode or a promotion framed mode. And depending on when the vacation reservation had to be made, it's going to appeal to different degrees. So again, the study design, just like we had for experiment 1. So the time, in terms of when the vacation reservation had to be made, whether it's the last minute, which would be in the near future, or whether it's during winter break, which would be consistent with the distant future. And then again, this email, whether it's framed in a promotion-focused manner or whether it's framed in a prevention-focused manner. And then again, we have these 4 cells, and the WTP here now stands for willingness to pay, right? Willingness to pay for the reservation. Right? So in study 1, our ultimate dependent variable, what we were interested in was the attitude towards the ad, the email. But here, what we're interested in is customers' willingness to pay. So again, the cells B and C are the diagonal cells, are the ones that are compatible and consistent, where B is, the decision to be made is the last minute, so it's in the near future. So then a message that's framed in a prevention-focused manner is going to be more appealing, and therefore they have a more favorable attitude, and therefore they're going to be more willing to pay a higher price. And then the same logic goes for C, whereas the off-diagonal cells A and D are incompatible and they're inconsistent with our predictions, and therefore they're going to have a less favorable attitude, which will eventually lead to a lower willingness to pay. So let's look at the results. So again, the dependent variable, the ultimate variable that we're interested in is WTP, willingness to pay. And again, depending on whether the reservation has to be made in the near future or the far future, as you can see, when the reservation has to be made in the near future, people are willing to pay a higher price for the airline tickets. When the prevention focus, when the ad or when the marketing communication was framed in a prevention-focused manner as opposed to a promotion-focused manner. But as you can see, when the vacation reservation had to be made in the distant future, which was a couple months out during winter break, then the ad that was presented in a promotion-focused manner led to a greater willingness to pay for the airline ticket as opposed to an ad that was presented or framed in a prevention-focused manner. So again, the results from experiment 2 are very clear, and it's very consistent with the experiment in experiment 1. The only difference being that in experiment 1, our dependent variable of interest was attitude towards the marketing ad, which was the email. In this case, in experiment 2, the dependent variable was customers' willingness to pay for the airlines. And again, the results show that, customers' attitude towards the ad and the willingness to pay for the ad, they change. The weight shifts depending on when the decision needs to be made. So the takeaway and the managerial implication is, depending on when the decision needs to be made, whether it's the near focus or far focus, a message, a marketing communication message, or the product, it needs to be framed differently, right? So when it's near focus, then a message that's framed in a prevention focused manner is more appealing than a message that's framed in a promotion focused manner. Whereas when the decision needs to be made in the distant future, then a message that's framed in a promotion focused manner is more appealing than a message that's framed in a prevention focused manner. So the data, the empirical results are very consistent with the predictions, and so this goes to show you, because this is totally under the control of the marketing manager, right? I mean, if you know that a decision needs to be made in the imminent future, then you can tweak your messages differently compared to when a decision needs to be made a couple months out or even further out than that. Then you focus on different elements of the marketing communications to make the message more persuasive and more convincing.